My name is David Hirsch, and I'd like to welcome you to the fifth annual Special Fathers Network Dads Virtual Conference. I'm thrilled to be here with so many like-minded dads for the fifth of our series. I'll mention that we started the virtual series back in May of 2020, and it was not because that was our plan, far from it, but you might remember that starting in March of 2020, everything went online, everything was virtual, and it was a difficult time, but it really gave us an opportunity to connect with so many more people in so many different locations, not only around the United States, but in different countries as well. And I think it peaked, our virtual conference attendance and interest peaked in 2021, and it's still been at a pretty high level. We expect over the course of today that as many as 70 or more dads who registered will join. And we have dads that signed up from England, from Wales, from the Cayman Islands, from Kenya, from Uganda, from Canada, and we also have a participant from India. So the message is getting out, and the purpose for the conference is to showcase the talent within the organization, to build relationships and access resources. And a little plug for the 21st Century Dads Foundation, the Special Fathers Network. The 21st Century Dads Foundation is a 501c3 not-for-profit organization, and its signature program has become known as the Special Fathers Network, a Mastermind mentoring program for fathers raising children with special needs. And at first, it was just trying to recruit a bunch of seasoned dads, typically dads who have 10 or more years of experience raising a child with special needs, and have that dad come alongside another dad who's closer to the beginning of his journey, raising a child with a similar or special need. So that's the notion that we started out on. And then somebody said to me, "Hey, Hirsch, what do you think about podcasts?" I said, "I like listening to podcasts. They're entertaining, some are enlightening, some are inspirational." They said, "No, not what do you think about listening to podcasts? What do you think about hosting a podcast?" I said, "That's pretty funny because I'm a financial guy. That's what I do for a living." And one thing led to the next. I started interviewing just a handful of local friends, guys that I've known for 10 or more years that have a child or children with special needs. And that was the very humble beginning of what we know today as the SFN Dad to Dad podcast, now with more than 300 episodes. And I'm proud that many of the dads who've joined today, virtually all the presenters, are what we refer to affectionately as our podcast dads, dads who have shared their stories, right, from 1 to over 300 now. And I want to give you a brief run of show. And I think the best way to do that would be to put on the screen, share my screen with you. I'm hoping that that provides everybody with the schedule. Unfortunately, Wayne Mesmer is not going to be with us to do the national anthem live, and we contemplated having a recording and decided not to do that. In a moment, I'll turn the Zoom stage over to Nathan Woerner, who will talk briefly about the Special Fathers Network Mastermind Group program and our plan for 2024. We have a special guest, Tom Dreesen, who's going to make a brief presentation starting on 9/11, which is a special day for him, and he'll explain that. And then we'll have Jim Stovall, who's been a perennial supporter and one of our podcast dads, make a brief presentation on having a vision. And then from there, we have two sections to our program. The first is on being selfish, which is the importance of doing something for yourself to make sure that you're in good physical, mental, emotional, as well as relational and spiritual health. And then we'll go to the second part of the conference after doing a brief breakout, and that'll be on the importance of being selfless, which is, I think, what most dads think about, which is, I want to be able to support my family, I want to be able to support my children, and some insights from dads who've been in the trenches. We'll do another brief breakout, and I'll do a wrap-up session, and I hope that within 2.5, not much more than that, we'll put you on your way for the weekend. So that's a brief run of show. What I'd like to do is turn the Zoom stage over to my good friend, Nathan Woerner. Nathan is podcast dad number 114. And Nathan, thank you so much for joining us let's hear about the Special Fathers Network Mastermind Group.
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome, gentlemen. It is very good to see you. I know quite a few of you. I've had conversations with even more. I wanted to briefly introduce what our mastermind group is, and then kind of give some testimonials from it, and invite you to communicate with me in regards to joining it or finding if this is the right place for you. The mastermind group is a deeply intentional weekly meetup where we are either in Zoom or in person. We have presently 4 groups that are purely Zoom, and 1 group that is hybrid with a monthly in-person meetup led by my good friend John Schaus and Matt Rabine, who are Matt's not on here yet, but John is. What we do with the mastermind group is we address one of the most common needs that we as special needs dads have. Brief introduction about myself. I've got a now 6-year-old daughter with a rare genetic condition called Angelman syndrome. It's like 1 in every 15 to 20,000. Upon diagnosis, I recognized that my family didn't quite understand what we were going through. My closest friends had no idea. My coworkers, my teammates, they really had no clue where to go and how to encourage me. So they offered great platitudes. But the thing that I needed and the thing that they could not provide is perspective. So I felt very alone. And I'm sure from the conversations that I've had with dozens and hundreds of dads like me, that is a common sentiment within our community of people just don't get my story. Like they don't understand that I had to wake up this morning and have to do whatever it was that I had to do. Like the things that if ever somebody steps into my life, the most common phrase is always, "Wow, you do a whole lot as a dad." That's true. We do. We do our best to help our kids, but we don't have a place where we can connect easily. And so what we do with the mastermind group is create a space where we can vent our frustrations, where we can share our celebrations, those tiny little bitty things that most people breeze through on their milestones for their 2-year-olds. We celebrate like hitting a home run when our 6-year-old is able to do these things. And so what we do within the mastermind group is create a space for that. There's also some really intentional and in-depth things that we've invested in this. As David had mentioned it before, we have 300 episodes, over 300 episodes of a podcast, many of whom are authors that David has interviewed. And so from that, we every 6 to 8 weeks, we will read a book written by one of the authors that was a podcast dad or mom. And at the end of that time, we get a chance to have a Zoom call, 1-hour Zoom call with that author. So we will then bring that concept to them, any questions we have about their story. And then the 6 weeks leading up to that, we read it together and we share questions from it. It's a place to spark conversation. The other thing we do, and I think this is the most powerful part of it, I mentioned earlier the isolation, the need to have a place where we can gain perspective. As I was telling my good friend, we as special needs dads often find ourselves in a pit. We often find ourselves in a hole, in a challenging situation where, like we're in a hole in the ground, everywhere we look is just dirt, and we really have no concept of how in the world we would see anything other than this dirt for the rest of our life. And the one thing that we need most of all, and the one thing we cannot create for ourselves, is perspective. And so we bring every few weeks, each one of the members of the mastermind group is invited to share something that is challenging them, something that they're going through. It could be everything from an IEP conversation where we deal with education, to how do I communicate well with my spouse, to I'm dealing with problems at work, or whatever it is. There's no limitation, but we bring something that is currently giving us pain and pressure. And then we let the other dads that are in this group give us that thing we cannot provide, which is perspective. Because as all of us know, when we're in that hole for just a minute, it feels like we're going to be in it forever. But we've been in those holes before and we've gotten out of them. And we look back at those holes and they were just a bump in the road. But while we're in the middle of it, it's really easy to believe that is going to be the end, the remainder of our life. And so having an opportunity to share that, to vent that, is really, really important and really, really powerful. Some of the things that we've done, I will reference a few of my friends. I had one that was in a very, very dark place prior to joining the Mastermind group. Thoughts of, you know what, I don't think I could see any way for this to end well. And so I think I might just end it now. And out of that, having a group of voices that have heard, that have listened to us, that know us well enough to share and to care and to invest in us, that changed that man's life, and he's now one of my Mastermind leaders. And so I invite you, if you're interested, I'll put my information on this. It'll be also in all of the emails that David sends out. Please communicate with me. I'd love to invite you to either be a leader or a member of one of these groups.
Hate when I do that. Nathan, I just want to say thank you for those comments about the Special Fathers Network Mastermind groups. And as a special treat, we're going to give everyone a free look who's not involved in a mastermind group this coming Tuesday. So you'll get a chance, if you're curious to know more about the mastermind group, to learn more. And there's a lot of information online. So I'd like to turn the Zoom stage over to my good friend, very good friend, Tom Dreesen. Tom and I have known each other for a better part of 20 years. Tom did a podcast interview last year. He was episode number 250 and 251. Some of you might recognize him because he's been around a long time. And he was going back in his youth, was the opening act for Frank Sinatra for 13 years. And he's been a stand-up comedian. He's been a motivational speaker. He's an author. He's a father. He's a grandfather. And like I said, he's been a good friend. And I'm just so thrilled that you could be with us today. I know you're here in Chicago, which is where you're born and raised. But you've lived out in LA for the better part of 40 years, and you're in town to do your one-man show, which I'm looking forward to seeing this evening as well. So, Tom, thank you for being with us. I've asked you to make some comments about overcoming adversity. You're on mute.
How is that? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Because David, I can't hear you.
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I only have a short time here, and talking about adversity, the one thing you realize when you get out of your childhood, because you think all of life is going to be roses, but that there isn't a human being on this planet that doesn't go through adversity. That is part of life. Living, you're going to have adversity, and you know, I'm not an expert on overcoming adversity, but I have overcome it. Briefly, in my childhood, I had 8 brothers and sisters. We lived in a shack. 5 of us slept in one bed at one time. We had no bathtub and no shower and no hot water. If you had holes in your shoes, you put cardboard in it. If a window broke, you stuck a rag in it. I shined shoes in taverns. I set pins in bowling alleys. I caddied in the summertime. I sold newspapers on the corner, all to help feed my brothers and sisters. And none of this do I regret, by the way. But so there was a lot of adversity in my childhood. And then I went in the military the day I turned 17. In the 4 years in the service, a lot of adversity. Those who served, you know what you go through, and you somehow you overcome it, you know, each time. But then coming out of the service, I was married, I had a wife and 3 kids. I was going from job to job and not finding what I wanted to do. I felt so unfulfilled that I'd find myself in a bar at 2 o'clock in the morning with my buddies, and I'd say, I don't belong here, but I didn't know where I belong. And I was just wandering aimlessly. But I began to pray. I really did. I began to pray, saying, God, show me what it is I'm supposed to be doing, because this can't be it, whatever I was doing, you know. And then what happened was I found what I wanted to do. I met Tim Reed, a black man, and we became America's first black and white comedy team. But at that moment, I knew this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a comedian. And that was, you know, I said, gee, I finally found what I want to do. But that didn't end adversity in my life. Going through the nation from 1969 to 1975 as America's first black and white comedy team, history shows you the last. a whole lot of adversity came in then, and we ran against obstacles in the North and the South that that we explained in a book later on, but a lot of adversity. And then this when I thought that the adversity was over. My wife didn't want to me to be in show business, and so I had rejection after rejection after rejection in show business. And then my wife decided she wanted a divorce, and I had to go through that adversity because she didn't want to be in show. And then I'm a 2-time cancer survivor. In 2010, they told me that I had a cancer. I recovered from that. In 2018, 3 doctors from USC told me, go home and put your affairs in order. 3 top-notch doctors. They said, I said, are you telling me I'm going to die? And they said, yes. And I said, how much time do I have? And they said, only God knows that. I said, well, I'm going to ask God for a second opinion. That was 5 years ago, and I'm still here. I survived it, and through a lot of adversity, through a major surgery and everything, But and then my son passed away, and that was very difficult on me. Another adversity after I had survived the cancer. So I've had a life full of adversity. But what's got me through, and it may not work for any of you, I don't know where you feel spiritually, but it was the power of prayer that I really, and I'm not an overly religious person, but as a little boy, when I went to Catholic school in first grade, I had a father that was alcoholic, and he didn't spend much time with us. A nice man, but his master was alcohol. So I couldn't go to my father there. Well, the nuns taught us that we had a father in heaven. Now I'm a little boy. I'm 6 years old. I'm very naive. And I thought, wow, I have a father in heaven. And the nuns told us that his son came here to tell us about their father. And they taught us the prayer, our Father who art in heaven. So I've always really, as a childlike belief, that I really did have a higher power that I could go to, a father I go to. And it made so much sense to me. All of you out there, if I said to any of you out there, have you ever been thinking about somebody that you haven't seen for a long time, and the phone rings and you pick up the phone and it's that person? You say, you won't believe this, but I was just thinking of you. And they say, I was thinking of you as well. You say, really? Or you're walking down the street, you had been thinking about someone you hadn't seen in years, you turn the corner and you run into that person and you tell that person, it's ironic that I was just thinking of you. They say, I was thinking of you too. Well, when I gave this talk one time at a church, I said, raise your hand if that happened. And the entire congregation said, it's happened to them. It's happened to all of us. Well, if human beings can transfer thought, and obviously we can, well, then how much power can a supreme being transfer? So I just always believed that whatever came into my life, that this is what the Father wanted for me, that this adversity, and so many times in my life, something that I thought was the end, that years later, when I look back, I said, wow, had that not happened to me, I wouldn't be in this position now. So it's all about what the cards were being dealt, to be basic. And so I really believe that our biggest fear is that we're alone. Psychologists say that all of us grew up as children, and we have a subconscious fear that what if our mom and dad weren't there? What if we were alone? And that fear stays with us throughout our life, the fear of being alone. And alone with this problem, with this adversity, that I'm all alone and I'm painted into a corner. And I believe you're not. I really believe you have a place to go to say, okay, show me how I can take this adverse situation I'm in and how it can help benefit others. And that's what you're doing in so many cases in your groups, where you're taking your adverse situations and sharing it, and that's helping others. So that's my answer to that. That just I really totally believe in the power of prayer. I really believe that it does work. And medical science now is oftentimes talking about the power of prayer does work, even in medical science. And I'll close with this. I've been a comedian for 55 years. That laughter is, for years, we've always thought laughter is psychologically a deterrent, because if you're watching, the brain can't think of 2 thoughts at the same time. It can't function 2 thoughts exactly at the same time. So if you're watching a comedian, you're not thinking of your problem. So laughter is psychologically a deterrent. And what we're finding out is now, because of a man named Norman Cousins, who was told he had a terminal illness, a heart condition, to go home, that he didn't have long to live. He was in the hospital, and they said it was through stress. And he laid in bed and he thought, if a negative input, stress, made me ill, then positive input could make me well. So he checked out of the hospital, and he would only watch I Love Lucy reruns, Candid Camera, Three Stooges, Marx Brothers. He don't listen to comedy albums. He didn't watch the evening news. He didn't read the evening newspapers. And he lived 27 years after the doctors told him he was going to die. So he would relieve the stress in his body through laughter. Because of him, UCLA did research on what happens to the human body when you laugh, that endorphins are released from the brain into the bloodstream. That's why after a hearty laugh, that you laugh and tears are running down your eyes. And this sense of well-being comes over you because your body's gone through an actual chemical change. So laughter is not only psychologically a deterrent, it's physiologically therapeutic. So, comedians are physicians of the soul. You don't have to call me Dr. Dreesen, but nonetheless, if you can find time in all of your stress and your adversity to also find time to laugh. Go see your favorite comedian or listen to a comedy album or watch a funny show to deter you from this adverse situation you're going through. It helps you survive the adversity. Laughter is healing, and it's very, very important in your life. I teach classes on motivation, but I'll tell people, laugh out loud 10 times a day. That's my prescription for you. Even if there's not something funny, there's times when I'm alone, I honestly stop. Something will be going through some stressful thing in my life, and I'll stop and I go, ha, 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 and I make myself laugh. I just go, ha, ha, ha. And I always feel a little bit better. So that, it's fine to find time to laugh in your life. Anyhow, that's all I have to say. I just so appreciate all of you. And I've said it to you before, that you're a group of tough guys. Tough. And by the way, you're a lot tougher than you think you are. You're a lot tougher than you think you are. You'll rise to the occasion when it comes. And I'm honored to be a part of you, among you as well. Thank you very much.
Well, Dr. Dreesen, thank you so much for those insights. There's a lot there to unpack, but the main message that I think I heard you say is that we're all going to face adversity, right? So just anticipate that, and try to look at the lighter side of things, and try to discipline your mind to focus on the positive, right, as opposed to the negative. I mean, it's easier said than done, but I'm so grateful for your being with us this morning. I'm so grateful for our friendship, and Tom, I'm hoping from your lips to God's ears that we'll be able to continue to do this for years and years to come.
Thank you. Okay, take care, guys. I got to run. Bye-bye.
Okay, see ya. Bye. Well, next up is Jim Stovall from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Jim is podcast dad number 163, and I'm going to brag on Jim a little bit. I read his first book maybe 30 years ago, which is entitled "You Don't Have to Be Blind to See." I've been following him for decades and decades. I learned that his dad was still alive about 3 or 4 years ago. He was in, I think, age 90. And I thought, oh my God, this is my chance to meet this guy, Jim Stovall. He's written 51 books, 8 of which have been made into major motion pictures. And I reached out to him, and he called me right back. And he said, I'm flattered. I'll talk with my dad. And he said, my dad thought long and hard about this, and he's decided that maybe it's not the time, right? Maybe he's just a little bit too old to be doing a podcast interview. He's a little bit disoriented, and I was heartbroken because I thought, oh my gosh, this is my chance to get to know Jim Stovall. And a couple months went by, and I got the courage to call Jim back, and I said, Jim, instead of interviewing your dad, what do you think about me interviewing you? And he said, oh, I'd be delighted to help share my story if you think it would inspire some others. So anyway, that's a little background story about how Jim Stovall and I have developed our friendship. And Jim has been one of the most celebrated speakers, not only here in our little network of Special Fathers Network Dads, but he has spoken all over the world to hundreds of thousands, millions of people. And I'm thrilled that, Jim, you could be with us this morning.
Well, it is great to be with you as always. And I always appreciate you asking me. I feel inadequate because you guys are the heroes. I'm not a dad. I didn't have a special needs child. I was a special needs child. My parents had 4 children. I had an older sister who died of leukemia and an older brother who died of cystic fibrosis. And then I became blind. I was diagnosed in my teenage years, and mom and dad had a lot to deal with. And then I have one younger brother who is what passes for normal in our family. But you know, as a speaker, you always have some idea what you're going to say, but every once in a while something happens that changes everything. And it happened while Tom Dreesen was speaking. When I started the Narrative Television Network, and quite simply as a blind guy, I was frustrated with my inability to access movies and television. And I found out there's 13 million people in the United States like me that can't access the visual medium. I developed the Narrative Television Network, and we add soundtracks to TV shows, movies, educational programs, and we started 30 years ago on cable TV. Now all primetime major programming is narrated for blind people, and we add this extra soundtrack that describes what's going on between the dialogue so that millions of blind people can access it. Well, in the beginning, we were on cable TV, and we just had a couple hours a day. And I showed a bunch of classic movies, old films, because that's all I could get permission to show back in the beginning. And because the films didn't fill my 2-hour blocks of programming, I would ask some of the movie stars that were in those movies to be on. So I had Katharine Hepburn, I had Jimmy Stewart, and Michael Douglas, some amazing people. And then one of the most amazing, there's photos of them in all of them in the lobby of my offices and studios here in Tulsa. But my pride and joy was Frank Sinatra. And I got to interview Mr. Sinatra. He was fabulous, and he gave us a lot of credibility. And I went and saw him perform several times. And, you know, he always had Tom Dreesen opening the show. So, man, I feel good today following Dreesen. This is about as good as it gets right here. But because I never saw Sinatra when he didn't follow Tom Dreesen. But, well, in fact, tell Tom when you see him that I really enjoyed him having Sinatra closing his shows. He did a great job, and Dreesen did a great show, and then he had Sinatra would mop it up a little bit there. And but also when you talk to Tom, ask him. I didn't know he was part of this black and white thing, and I wasn't familiar with his work until I became blind. So just all I want to know is if it's a black and white team, which one was Tom? I never knew, so I'd love to know that, because if everybody in the world was like me, we would have no racial issues whatsoever. But thinking about what to talk to you guys about today, you know, we lost my father last fall, and that is still impacting my brother and I every day, as it will for the rest of our lives. And we were talking about the lessons Dad taught us that stay with us. I mean, one of my earliest memories, and my brother, it's the same way, we concur, you know, is Dad saying, if you're not 10 minutes early, you're late, period. And I had a guy I do an executive podcast. I consult with a lot of Fortune 500 CEOs. And this guy says, what do you do when you're late? And I thought about it. I said, I don't ever remember being late. I'm sure I was. But from my earliest memories, you know, my brother and I learned if you're not 10 minutes early, you're late. Well, we had an amazing thing when my dad passed. They rushed him to the hospital. He was nearly 92 and very, very healthy right up until the end. But they said, he's gone. Basically, there's no brain waves. There's nothing. We'll just keep him here until he slips away. And so we were prepared for that. And then finally he said, well, this is dragging out a little bit. So we're going to move him upstairs in a room where he can be comfortable and quiet. And then the rest of you may as well go home, and we'll call as soon as he passes. Well, I stayed up most of the night sitting, waiting for the phone to ring, and it never rang. So at 7 in the morning, I called the hospital, and I get the nurse's station. I said, look, I was calling to check on my father. And she said, oh, yeah, I was just in visiting with him. And I said, no, ma'am, you weren't visiting with my father. My father's the one they brought in with no brain activity, and they were just waiting for him to pass. Yeah, he's in there eating breakfast right now. And I said, ma'am, I think you got the wrong guy. She said, you want to talk to him? I said, yeah. So next thing I know, Dad picks up the phone and says, hey. And I said, what are you doing, Dad? He said, I'm trying to eat my breakfast. If you'd quit calling me while I'm trying to eat here. And I said, well, good. I said, everything going okay, Dad? He said, yeah. I said, you sleep good? He said, I don't remember ever sleeping any better than that. And we had an extra, what I call a bonus day with Dad. And it was really amazing. My brother got to spend a lot of time with him, because my brother lives out of town and hadn't spent as much time with Dad in recent years as I had. And it was just a great time. But I remember learning how Dad, I said, where did it, if you're not 10 minutes early, you're late, where did that come from? And Dad said, oh, I was 8 years old in the middle of the Depression. I'm in the 4th grade. And he said, I was one of the best students in the class, but somehow we were supposed to write a report about something, and I didn't get the message or something. He said, I have no idea what happened, but the teacher came in and she said, I need everybody to turn in their papers. And he had to go up and say, look, I don't know what happened. I didn't even know about this. And he said, is there any way I could write the paper and bring it tomorrow? And she said, I will allow that. And so my dad went home, really worked hard on this paper, brings it the next day. And about a week later, the teacher says, okay, I'm going to pass out your papers that you all did. But before I do, I need to let you know and acknowledge one of you wrote the best paper I've read in 20 years as a teacher here in this school. And it's George Stovall. And I want to congratulate him on how great this paper is. Well, then she passes out the paper, and my dad notices he got a D. So after class, he said, why did I get a D? You said it was the best paper ever. She said, well, let's review how we grade. A is for excellent. Nothing that's late is ever excellent. B is for good. Nothing happens good when you're late. C is for satisfactory. Being late is never satisfactory. D is for unsatisfactory. That's the best grade I can give when you're late. And my brother and I thought about that, and that just stuck with us all these years. And, and it's when you plant seeds with your kids, you never know what's going to happen in those amazing moments. Those, my late great friend and mentor, Coach John Wooden, always told his players, and late in his life told me, everything you do in your life, every encounter, every word, everything you do, ask yourself one question: what would I do right now if I were amazing? Well, when you put those little seeds in with your kids, you never know what's going to happen. My brother now runs a $80 million construction company up in Missouri, and they had a disruption on their board. And he said, can you fill in this board seat until the end of the year, and then we'll bring somebody in. So I did, and I'm on my brother's board, and I meet everybody, and we're about to start the first meeting, and their chief financial officer says, guys, let's get going. If you're not 10 minutes early, you're late. And I said, I wonder where you got that. And, it never goes away. And my dad always told us, anything you do, good or bad, anything you do, good or bad, you always get paid for. You get paid later than you planned, you get paid more than you planned, but you will always get paid what you planned. So sometimes in the midst of your frustration and you don't think you're getting anywhere, plant a little tiny seed and stand back and watch. You'll be amazed. David, I want to thank you once again for asking me to be here, and give my regards to Tom Dreesen. I can think of no better honor than having Tom open for me.
Jim, that was brilliant. Thank you for your presentation. I will definitely pass along your regards to Tom Dreesen when I see him tonight, and thank him for being your opening act as well.
Thank you.
Thanks again for being with us again this year, Jim. I'm hoping our paths will continue to cross. You're one of my all-time favorite people on the planet. I keep saying that to people, and I mean it, and this is my way of publicly thanking you. So thanks again for being with us today, and have a great Mother's Day to you and your bride.
Thank you.